And good evening. This is the Tech Travel Geeks podcast. This is episode number 18, which is being recorded at a slightly later time in the day for those of you in the United Kingdom or in Europe, but at our usual recording time in the United States of America, specifically in the Eastern Time Zone. We have two people who are joining me this evening. First, our co-host, our Chief Aperture Officer at Tech Travel Geeks, Lukasz. Good evening, Lukasz. Where are you?
Hey Matteo, right now I'm in Miami, Florida. My first visit here, so yeah, enjoying the US on a quick trip before my cruise. So yeah, having
Very
fun
good.
here.
And what's the cruise you're on?
It's the heavy metal 70,000 tons of metal cruise, which starts tomorrow. So I'm super excited.
Excellent. You'll be able to tell us all about cruise ship roaming charges when you get back.
Oh, that might be fun. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other person who was quietly laughing on the other end of the line is our guest for this evening, Ant Pruitt. Welcome to the Tech Travel Geeks podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, my man. How you doing?
Very well, thanks. Thank you for joining us. We've missed each other by a matter of an episode a few times on the Twit network on All About Android, but we've never actually been on an episode together. So thank you for joining us on the Tech Travel Geeks podcast.
My
So
pleasure.
Ant Pruitt of Tech Republic and the Ant Pruitt's YouTube channel fame. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. So most of our listeners may not have heard of you. Ant, tell us more about yourself. Who are you? Where are you from?
Well, I am a freelance digital content creator and knowledge sharer based in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I just like to try to create content that is geared more towards the beginning content creator. You know, people that are just wanting to get started with YouTube, get started with photography or videography or what have you. And I just like to discuss the different tips and tricks and tools that I've experienced in my little short run here. And I've had some pretty decent success. And I just want to try to pass along any little bit of knowledge that I've gotten because sometimes it's hard to get that information to learn. You have to bloody your nose a little bit, and I'm trying to make the world a little less with bloody noses.
Yes, I personally have learned a lot watching your YouTube videos and consuming your content that you create. It's great. And from what I see, you're obviously very, very into photography. You're very good into editing and creating content from raw images, whereas I'm still at the phase of recording a dirty video with my phone and just uploading straight to YouTube.
Hey, I do that too. Now, trust me, there's nothing wrong with that. I do that too. Content is content, baby.
Exactly. But obviously, I'm learning a lot by watching your YouTube videos, and from what I see, you're also quite passionate about drone flying, and you have a drone.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I have an Autel Robotics X-Star drone that I've been using for years now, and I've never really felt the need to jump on the DJI bandwagon just yet because that thing, it costs me a lot less money and it does just as good when it comes to the content.
I've not had the pleasure playing with those, so I'd be quite interested to learn more. I started watching a few of your videos. One of them was about ND filters for your drone, so it looks like it's quite well supported. So
Oh yeah, it's got its little quirks here and there, but for the most part, I haven't had any real concerns. And if I needed to get some footage, I can just put it out there and get the footage without any issues.
does it do 4K and all the
Yep,
other?
4K at 30 frames. It doesn't do 60 frames, but 4K at 30 frames, and then anything below that I can do 60 or 120. But most of the time, I just
Okay.
do the 4K 30.
Awesome.
And
Sorry, how do you remote control that drone? Is it via smartphone, or do you have a dedicated controller?
No, it has a dedicated transmitter. And this was another big kicker with me as far as getting that particular drone was the transmitter has a little LCD on it. It's only about 3 inches or so, but it has all of the, telemetry stuff on it, altitude, speed, and so forth, and gives you the same return to home function if you lose connection to it and all of that. But in addition to that transmitter, you can still plug up your smartphone or tablet. So I would normally attach a tablet for larger view. And the camera on it is modular. I can take the camera off of the drone, and when I'm wanting to try to quote unquote upgrade the camera, I can do so without having to buy a brand new drone. And that modular that modular camera has actually saved me some money, because if you own a drone, you will crash a drone. I don't care how good you think you are, but I've crashed my drone and that camera has come flying off. And the only thing that I needed to get fixed was, the arm on the camera, not the whole drone, So it saved me a lot of money.
What format is the camera? Is it's not the Micro Four Third, is it?
No, it is. It's got a decent size. I thought it was 16:9, like 1/3 inch sensor, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
It's not quite half, but it's not too bad.
All right. Sounds good. I'll definitely look into it. And yeah, in crashing drones, my second flight was under a bridge. That was a fantastic idea. Without knowing how to steer perfectly, I decided to fly up when I was under the bridge. So,
oh man, come on.
I learned a lot that day, so it was valuable.
Nice.
Very good. So, Ant, you fly a drone and you take some great footage. What sort of regulations are there where you live and where you travel to about flying drones?
Well, fortunately, I am outside of a lot of the restricted zones by maybe 10 miles or so. I don't know how many kilometers that is, but the Charlotte airport is not very far from my house, but I am still I'm just outside of that range to where I can fly without being any type of impedance or interference with the ATC here. Most of the restrictions would still be over national parks and things of that nature, but I don't have a lot of those restrictions here in North Carolina. Now, when I went to LA back in October, because I was attending the Adobe Max conference, I wanted to fly out there because Los Angeles has all of the beautiful skylines and, and the beaches and things like that. But I pulled up my Before You Fly mobile app to check out, what's restricted and the safe fly zones. LA is virtually red. You can't fly anywhere. So you have to be careful with things like that and just do all your research before you fire up the drone, because if something happens, you are liable and you can be fined pretty heavily,
Yeah, it's one of the big challenges with drones. It's a new technology. Legislation in that area is by nature slow, and also classification of drones as aerial vehicles, powered aerial vehicles, makes them automatically fall within the rules of civil aviation authorities or federal aviation authorities, depending on where you are in the world. Have you ever had to register to use your drone in a restricted area?
I have called ATC twice in my career, and both times ATC was like, thanks, man, but we don't care. We got other stuff to worry about. We have these several ton aircraft flying around that we're trying to keep from hitting one another and landing properly. And the last thing we're worried about is your little 4-pound quadcopter, But I've called them twice. And the first instance I called, the ATC person had no idea what I was talking about, because it's a smaller airport, smaller regional airport where you have essentially like Cessnas. There's no jets or things like that. And the tower controller was like, do what now? And I said, well, by law, I'm supposed to contact you and let you know when and where I'm going to fly and the altitude that I'm going to fly at. And he was like, okay, thanks, and hung up the phone. Now, in another instance, this was more of a popular airport, and that controller, he actually hung up on me because he's like, can you call me right back? Because he was really busy. He just hung up. And I called him back and he says, okay, I'm sorry, I was busy. Now, who are you? What are you doing? And I told him where I was going to be flying. And he said, thank you for this. I've written it down, but in all honesty, I really don't care. I really don't care, but I'm just trying to cover myself, because you have to register your drone and put your little stickers on it with the registration. And if something happens, my sticker can very easily be traced back to me, and I don't want to face any fines.
So it's good to see you're doing things by the book. Lukasz, unlike your registration when traveling in China.
Well, I did register it in China, but that was the only time I had to register. But I think the rules might get tighter in the UK after some recent events when the Heathrow the Gatwick airport was completely blocked by someone just flying drones around, and I'm sure there will be more restrictions coming up. So I'm enjoying my drone while I can.
I think that was an alleged drone, because the last I heard is they didn't really confirm it was a drone.
Yeah, that's also true.
And rumor has it that the drones spotted were actually the drone spotting drones. So drones that were sent out to find the other drones. But then again, we can't comment on this. We weren't involved in the investigation. We didn't speak to anyone involved in it. It's a very meta situation in this case.
And yes. I don't want to start talking about Area 51 and other conspiracy theories, because YouTube is soon to start limiting exposure of those videos. So let's not go there.
But since you did mention Area 51, I have a top tip for Tech Travel Geeks listeners. If you are thinking of visiting Las Vegas, Nevada, and taking a short detour around Area 51 in a rental car, be sure to stock up on water and fuel, because what looks like a relatively small area on Google Maps is actually a 6 to 8 hour drive, and you really need that fuel to get around it.
Man, it's amazing. I've seen that as part of like my things to do when I go to Vegas for CES or something like that. And I'm like, there's no way I can plan the time to go out there and check that out.
Yeah. For me, it was a complete accident. My partner Candice and I were on a road trip. I believe in this case we were driving from Northern California down through to Vegas, and we thought we'd take this detour around Area 51. And the scale of it is amazing. It's amazing scenery, but you keep on seeing this pretty straight road down a hill that then goes through the trough and all the way up a hill. And you say, oh, there must be a town or a petrol filling station just over the hill. Nope, it's another whole valley. And after a few of these hills, we realized that the low fuel light was on, and we had to start putting the car in neutral to go down hills to save fuel.
Oh, man.
We were worried about that. So don't fly drones near Area 51. It's definitely not a place to do it.
Oh, no.
And remember to have lots of fuel and water, just in case.
Pro tip.
So, and you mentioned you've recently been to LA and to Vegas. Tell us more about what you were doing there and what the trip was for.
Sure. Well, when I went to Las Vegas, I was sent there by the folks at Tech Republic and CBS Interactive to cover Adobe. Adobe has their annual, it's not really a developer conference, but you can pretty much compare it to that. And it's their Adobe Max conference. And I've been fortunate to be able to build some relationships with the Adobe PR folks and some of the top Adobe executives there. It's been quite nice. And so I went out there to cover that event and just check out what Adobe had to offer and share that with my readers and share that with the people that are subscribed to my channel, because I'm an Adobe customer. You know, I do not hold that back. And I have actually said in a few of my articles that I'm an Adobe fanboy, because I am. And so I wanted to go there and share my experience as far as what's being brought to market with Adobe and how people can use that to help, create awesome content. And what I enjoyed the most about that was the whole AI spin that Adobe is pushing out. Initially, I was totally against it. AI trying to edit photos, I just didn't see how that's going to capture my eye and capture the Aunt Pruitt look when it comes to editing a photo. But it's more to it than that. It's more built along the lines of, you know, cutting down repetitive tasks inside of Lightroom or inside of Photoshop. And that's what sold me, because a lot of times in Photoshop, if I want to do a selection, the pen tool and the magic wand tool, they do okay, but it still can be pretty tedious at times. But the Adobe Sensei stuff is just one click of a button and boom, it's done. So that can save a lot of time. And when you're saving time as a content creator, you're able to create more content and hence, you know, get more gigs. But that was LA. Now, as far as Las Vegas, that was for CBS Interactive and Tech Republic. Sent me out there to cover CES. And I've been to CES a handful of times now, and I've learned a lot each year that I've gone. And this particular visit was different from previous ones, because the previous ones I was just there to look at pretty much anything interesting consumer electronics wise. You know, no real focus, just whatever I thought was interesting and put my own spin on it. But this time I was dealing more with content creators. So I saw a lot of things on speakers and microphones and drones and things of that nature, and a little bit of AI there, and just had some fun with it.
What was your favorite product there? What would you say was your favorite?
Believe it or not, a projector.
Oh,
An actual projector, and the projector is about the size of this sheet of paper here. Okay.
wow.
And it's from the folks at Canon. You know, of course, Canon's PR people reached out to me to set up a booth tour and all of that. And I was game to do that because I'm a Canon fan. And they're showing me around the booth, and they showed me this little projector, and I believe it's called the Rayo S1. And the guys are doing the presentation, and I'm sort of yawning like, okay, yeah, it's a projector, whatever, you know. But as a photographer, I can take this projector with me, okay, and wirelessly connect that to my camera while I'm doing a photo shoot, and it'll project up onto the screen while I'm doing the photo shoot, instead of me taking a laptop and tethering with those cords that always gets tripped over and someone tries to knock your laptop down, you know, and the model gets all uncomfortable. But I have this little tiny projector that can fit into my pocket and pull up a nice HD image, and it's beautiful wirelessly, you know. So that's probably my favorite thing that I saw there.
Wow, that's something I need to look into. That's really interesting. I think there's so much that can be done with current cameras compared to smartphones, how difficult it is to, you know, export files, to edit files, to share files.
Mhm.
How can cameras not connect to the internet and share to Instagram? Boggles me. If you buy a $5,000 camera and
Right,
you have to either have a really old cable or use an app that's not been updated for 5 years.
right.
And smartphones, you know, on latest smartphones, you can do anything, and it's such a difference. So anything that helps with the workflow, I would be up for. Yeah.
The thing is that I find interesting is, as much as this world is geared around snapping the content and getting the content out, you would think that these camera manufacturers, whether it's Canon or a Nikon or whomever, would say, you know what, let's leverage that. But they never seem to mention leveraging that at all. You know, they're more worried about form factor and sensor size and megapixels and things of that nature. And I'm like, well, these photographers today, I don't care if it's, you know, if the number one rated photographer that's out there right now, he or she is going to snap an image, and the next thing they're thinking about is processing it and getting it out to the wild. And how soon can they do that? Why not work with that photographer team and you know, figure out a ways to you know, get APIs or something that can work with the worlds of social media and get that stuff out. But hey, what do I know? I'm just a little lowly content creator.
So,
Yeah.
sorry, just a quick question. So, What sort of camera do you use on a daily basis? What's your daily driver as far as cameras goes, Andrew?
Most of the time, I just use a Rebel, Canon Rebel, but everything else, I just rent something. I just rent something, but whatever sits in the house is just a Canon Rebel, and it does the job. Just it's all about the composition. But if I need to get something with more megapixels and different bit of glass on it, I'll go rent one, and it
That's
seems
the
to work
best way
just
to do it.
fine. Saves a lot of money.
And so you obviously have access to a range of devices. What's your preferred camera when it comes to software?
I'm always about the Canon number one, but believe it or not, I prefer the 6D Mark II over the EOS R, as well as over the 5D Mark IV. It just feels comfortable in my hands. I'm beginning to grow towards the EOS R a little bit more, because it's not a typical mirrorless camera where it has some girth to it. I don't know if you can tell on camera, but I have some big ass hands. So the mirrorless cameras of today, they feel like little toys in my hand, and I've never really been comfortable with them. The technology behind the mirrorless cameras are awesome for a photographer, but I will tell anybody that's interested in those, go with what feels right. Don't go with just the best tech. Go with what feels right in your hands to be able to create the best content out there.
Yeah, the EOS R is the first generation product. This is the first time that Canon really tried a full frame mirrorless camera. Unlike Sony, who have done 3 generations, and each generation has multiple versions. So yeah, it won't be great. And the 6D Mark II got really bad reviews at the beginning, but then more and more people started
Now I'm starting to
loving
see
it.
people love it.
Like Casey Neistat uses it, and people like Peter McKinnon and
Yeah.
others. So that's quite crazy. So good to hear that you enjoy
Yeah,
it.
I love that thing. It's now granted the 5D Mark IV has the better megapixel and the autofocus and all of that, but just from being quick and easy to use, and then that extra benefit of having the flip out screen,
Yep.
I love that because I shoot a lot of low angle photographs, and I don't necessarily want to lie on the ground all the time. I don't have a problem doing it, but having that flip out screen, I could take my little Gorilla Pod or what have you and put it on the ground, flip the screen, and I could see my framing so much easier with the flip out screen instead of having to get down behind it. And it's just little things like that that helps make that job go a little bit faster and a little bit easier for me or the subject that I may be shooting at the time.
Yeah, the flip out screen is huge, and it seems like Canon has the only company to have the rights to use it nowadays. And
Seems
even
like it.
latest Panasonics won't have it. I'm a GH5 user, and I love this camera to bits, but it's not so comfortable. I mean, it's too big for me. I have small hands and I travel a lot. So this is the first trip in more than a year, first major trip that I decided not to take my camera. Instead of, I have 2 phones in my
That's
pocket.
blasphemous.
Yeah, so I have the Huawei Mate 20 Pro and the Samsung S9 Plus. 2 of the best cameras. No,
Those are
well,
great
S9 Plus.
cameras.
Yeah, S9 Plus is good for video. The Huawei is fantastic for photos, and I'm not missing it. I'm not
Yeah,
missing
those are great.
the big camera because yeah, it's just a bit too big, and the functionality of the phones is better than the camera. So only for video. Video you can't beat. You can't beat the depth of field. You can't beat
Right.
slow motion on a phone. You can't do that. But for
Right.
photos, phones all the way. What's your phone of choice?
Pixel.
All right.
Pixel. I have the Pixel 2 at the moment, because I refuse to spend $1,000 for a cell phone again. It's a dadgum phone. I'm not spending that kind of money ever again. So I will hold on to this Pixel until it croaks, and then when it croaks, I will try to revive it before spending that kind of money on the next Pixel. When I get the Pixel 3 or whatever it is coming out next, it will be because it has a great price, or they just gave it to me, because I'm not spending $1,000 again. I just won't.
Yeah. So on that note, you mentioned you have the Pixel. When you use the Pixel 2 for creating content, pictures and video, what do you think the strong points are of it?
Well, the video is the biggest one for me because of the built-in stabilization. It's gotten better. I remember in the original Pixel, it had the stabilization and it was pretty good. But this one in the latest update, and I'm sure it's available in the 3 now, but it just seems so much better with the stabilization, and it works really, really well with one of these guys, these gimbals, and it just, no one would ever know that you're shooting on a phone because you're shooting it in 4K and it's in 30 frames per second, so it's buttery smooth.
Yeah, I'm obviously using a Pixel 3. Out of choice, I decided to spend quite a lot of pocket money on one, and it is my preferred point-and-shoot camera because I don't have to make much of an effort to frame the picture. Right. It's just point and shoot. It's fantastic. And I think Google have got that really right with the Pixel.
They did.
What I would say is I too have a Huawei Mate 20 Pro. When I put more effort into framing the shot or playing around with the settings, that does surpass it especially in low light. But there is a lot of effort that you need to put into it. You need to really work it. Whereas with a Pixel, it's really easy, and the content creation is facilitated. It's essentially the same as what you were saying earlier about manual tasks and repetitive tasks.
Right.
You don't have to take the picture more than once. You just point and shoot, which is great.
I love it. My family is pretty much a Pixel family, and everyone in this family can take some really, really nice photos because of that. They literally just pick it up. I'm not going to sit here and say the missus is the best photographer, but she takes some great shots because the phone makes it so much easier for her. And then I have my youngest son. He is an aspiring photographer, so he really gets into it, far as framing it up with the rule of thirds and things of that nature and whatnot. But it makes it so much easier for everybody.
That's great. So obviously, mobile is a new space in terms of photography and is enabling content creation for all. That then also opens up the possibility to processing, and as we mentioned earlier, uploading to social media and different sharing platforms, monetization platforms as well. Do you think there's going to actually be a closer integration between the, let's call them proper camera creators and manufacturers and these social platforms, or do you think they will be using smartphones as a bridge?
I still think it's going to be the smartphone as a bridge, but I'm not going to count the smartphone out because I know I have personally done a professional headshot photo shoot using my Pixel, and it nobody knew unless I told them that I shot these with a phone. The client was happy. The clients were happy. But nobody knew that it was shot with a phone, and that's because all it takes is the right kind of framing, lights, and these things. They can do a good job. So I'm not going to just count them out just yet. I know that these things are going to get better, and it's going to make things a little bit easier on the photographers in the real world. But right now, it's still just a bridge to be able to get what you've shot on that full frame sensor, to pull it onto your phone, do a quick edit on it, and throw it up to Instagram. Because Instagram is not where your best edits are. It's just where your feed is. It's just where all of your social interaction is, to let everybody know what's going on. So it's good enough to pull it off of that camera with a Wi-Fi connection, some type of ad hoc Wi-Fi connection, and do a quick edit in Lightroom CC or something, and boom, share it out.
That's great. Just this is maybe an aspirational thing. Your more likely than we are to be in this situation. And if a smartphone manufacturer came to you and said, we would like to work with you and we'll give you this pre-release device, we think the camera is really good, would you go on a trip to demonstrate how good this camera is? And if so, where would you go? What would you choose as your subject for that? Sorry,
Man.
it's quite a heavy question.
Because I dream of stuff like this.
We all do. I mean,
I
it's
do.
what we all dream of.
Two places come to my mind, actually. I would love to go to Utah. I believe it's called Zion. There's a park out there with all of the beautiful mountain ranges, and be able to see the different times of day, because morning time is going to look a certain way versus sunset time is going to look a certain way, with all of that extra atmosphere that's out there in those mountains. And then next, I would like to go somewhere like Switzerland with the Alps and the snow, and you're going to get all of that bright white light coming off of those mountains. And I would like to see just how well a smartphone camera can handle that, because too much light can hurt. So how can your camera adapt to that and allow you to be able to pull out just the right image and not have all of the highlights blown out and things like that. But yeah, I've thought about this.
No, that's fantastic. Those are really good examples, because especially with the Switzerland example, in most cases, I would expect a smartphone camera to blow out the image because of the excessive amount of white, and the ISO sensitivity of the sensors isn't as good for those situations, though they are getting better, especially with HDR and multiple lenses and clever software.
I can remember at one time when the HDR Plus was implemented. I think it was in the early stages. I turned it off because I didn't think it did a good job. I much rather process the image to make it look better myself versus Google's AI or computational photography trying to figure it out, because sometimes it made the image too flat. And I know it was thinking, hey, we need to boost these shadows up so you can see the details in the shadows. Well, sometimes I want those shadows to have crushed blacks because it works with the composition, but nowadays it seems to be getting a little bit better and working with me more so than working against me.
So do you should draw?
Oh yeah.
Or yeah?
Oh yeah.
I'm not there yet. It's a bit too much effort for me just now.
Well, Lukasz, I screw up a whole lot of shots, and so shooting in RAW, I can at least rescue it.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's something I want to look into. Definitely.
The trip to CES, I shot at night down in Fremont Street, and shooting at night is already one challenge. But then shooting at night with a bunch of moving subjects, that just really makes that a lot more challenging. And if I wasn't shooting in RAW, there was no way I was going to save those images. No way. It's too much noise that could be there, or just really, really, really bad, bad quality shots.
Yeah.
That's great. So I saw you recently reviewed a backpack to carry your drone and camera gear. What was that backpack? How did it work out for you?
Well, there was one recently I've done. It was from the folks at Polar Pro, and it was the Drone Trekker backpack. And the thing is, that thing, it's not necessarily a drone backpack. It's a photographer's backpack. You can put anything in there. And the best thing that I like about it is, first off, is the size of it. And secondly is the pricing. The pricing of it is pretty competitive. It's pretty durable. You can put a cover on it to keep it waterproof, because without the cover, it's not waterproof. But it seemed like a nice bag for someone that's getting ready to get started in this thing, But my bag of choice is my Peak Design backpack. Peak Design, they're definitely geared towards the prosumer photographer. And my bag is not necessarily a drone bag. you can put one of the smaller drones on the inside, but I have strapped my drone to the outside because it has straps that allows you to strap things to the back of it, and it works just flawlessly. It's waterproof, and I've tried to beat the bag up. I've destroyed it. I've had it for a couple of years now, and you'd never know it. It's just a great, durable bag. It's a little pricey, but that comes with the lifetime warranty on it. So it's one of those things where you get what you pay for, and you're making an investment, not necessarily making a purchase.
That's great. And so when you travel, if you travel by air, how does that work going through security? Do you have any issues?
Oh gosh, it depends on the moon phase, I guess, because some days it's not a problem. By law, of course, you have to pack your batteries on your carry-on. So I always have my batteries with me, and I tend to take the drone apart and stick it in my check bag because I just don't want to carry it around and have it sort of dangling or anything like that. And there's been a lot of times where I get back to my hotel room and I notice that the zipper on my luggage was moved from where I was. And I'm like, somebody's been in my bag. And then on this last trip from CES, I got home and started to unload all of my stuff. And the TSA left me a nice little slip on the inside. It said, "Hey, we opened your bag just to check out what you got going on in here." And I'm like, really? It's not necessary. All of the bad stuff was going with me through security, but it just sort of depends on the phase of the moon. Sometimes it's no issue, and there's other times there's little, "Hey, we're watching you" notes like that.
Yeah. To be fair, the TSA is quite consistent in that, as in every time I've had a bag with packets of Oreo cookies coming back from the US, they immediately open those, because if you look at it on an X-ray, it looks like little tubes of
Yes.
of unidentified paste in little cells, and it could look like, I don't know, lithium,
plutonium,
but it could be something else. To be fair, if Nabisco ever decided to make a durian Oreo, yes, that would be a dangerous product, and it would look into.
I love it.
But yeah, that's the good thing. Thanks to the TSA and all the other institutions that keep us safe whilst traveling. Those of us who are a bit more insensitized to it find some of their actions amusing, but we understand why, and we thank them for their service.
Definitely.
So that's great. So your bag, your preferred bag, your choice of bag is the Peak Design.
Yep, it's the Peak Design Everyday Backpack 30L.
Excellent. We will link to that in the show notes because that's definitely a top tip. And that's great. So apart from those recent travels, have you had any other trips, memorable trips that you'd like to tell us about, and had some interesting tech-related story to the trip?
Yeah. And there's only a little bit of tech involved, though, but I'm glad I had it. I attended Mobile World Congress. I think it was 2015 or 2016. And the travel was an absolute nightmare. My stuff got lost and sent back to the States. So I was over there in Spain without any clothes for a couple days. But I did have my Chromebook. And I've always said that if you're going to travel, try to travel light from a laptop perspective. And I think Chromebooks are a great way to be able to let you get connected to the internet and still use tools for photo editing that's outside of the world of Adobe, because there's a bunch of different apps out there. I use one called Polar. Used to be a free app. Now it's a paid service. I think it's maybe $20 US a year, something like that. But this is a nice photo editing app similar to Lightroom, and it allows you to go in and edit raw images and things of that nature. But yeah, I went to Spain, and all I had was my camera at the time and that Chromebook, and being able to walk around Spain in my filthy, stinky clothes until I got some new clothes, but still create some content. I was so grateful for that Chromebook. and that wireless connectivity to be able to get up and edit photos and get my content shared and out to the public. But yeah, Spain was a lot of fun when I finally got my clothes.
Awesome. On that note, are you going to be at MWC this year?
Not this year. I didn't plan on it, didn't budget it. Maybe again in another couple years. I don't know. It just sort of depends on what happens with the smartphone market, because quite honestly, I have smartphone fatigue. There's not much innovation happening anymore. They all look the same. Everybody wants to go bezel-less, and I don't believe in bezel-less. Again, going back to the big hands, I need that bezel to keep me safe on the screen and not getting caught with that weird, you're in between windows kind of thing. That's the one thing that annoys me about the Pixel, is the thinner bezels versus the Pixel 1 that I had. So yeah, I don't know, maybe in a couple years. Though I did see the Nubia X, the ZTE Nubia X at CES. I did a video of that, and that was pretty fascinating to see that dual screen, front and back. It almost looked like a little magic trick,
Yes, and it's very shiny on the back, so when the screen's off, it looks like a normal smartphone.
Right, you'd have no idea, and it felt like a regular phone. And I like that they had the built-in fail safes to keep you from not activating something on the back and things like that. It was pretty nice.
Yeah, there are some newer form factors coming in, such as the Nubia X, a phone with a screen on the front, just like any other phone, but with minimal bezels and a second screen on the back. Another fashion coming from China seems to be the slider. The slider has been born again, but not with any buttons and controls like in our old Nokia N95s or in our Palm Pre's with a full QWERTY keyboard.
And
this slider is just about selfies. Do you have slider nostalgia, and?
I never did jump on that train, but I remember when I think of slider, I think of the HTC. What was it? But it was their first slider.
G1? The first Android phone?
No, this was a Windows phone. This was a Windows Mobile. And I think this was a Windows Mobile 5. It wasn't version 6.
Ooh, okay. Now I remember.
It was way back in HTC Pro something. I can't remember, but I remember having envy over that one, and the keyboard felt really good, but I never did get it. I ended up getting the Droid X. Yeah, I ended up getting the Droid X. And I'm glad I did, because that phone got me into photography a lot more.
Very good. So how did you get into photography? How did you become a content creator, and?
Totally random, brother. I had my Droid X. When I'm not creating content, I'm actually an IT guy that stares at SQL and databases all day. And this particular day, I was when I was working in an office, I was outside the office walking around a little park or whatever, just catching a break. And I had my Droid X, and there was a beautiful little pond, and I pulled the camera out and I just took a picture because it was pretty. And when I looked at it on my phone, I was like, wow, that really is pretty. So I kept trying it and seeing what I could do, from a composition standpoint. And the monster was born. I couldn't stop shooting. So I was shooting almost every day with that phone. And I eventually started a smartphone photographers community on Google Plus, which is pretty much dead now. And it just grew. I don't know how many members, but I had a lot of members, and I started doing a weekly hangout on air / podcast where we talked about different tips and tricks and challenged each other to do, certain types of composition. Like one week we would say only black and white, or another week we would make you focus on chiaroscuro or high key lighting and things like that. And it was all using a phone. No DSLRs, point and shoots, or anything like that were allowed. And it just grew from there, and I just been hooked ever since.
That's awesome. That's really good to hear. So it's not just Lukasz and I doing this out of passion. it's you as well. That's good to hear.
Oh, yeah.
There's
I
more than
love
just us.
love what I do. Every now and then, it's I sort of pinch myself because I love doing what I do, and then I have opportunities like with Tech Republic or the clients that I have here and there around town to actually pay me for doing what I love to do. It's just a bonus.
I would say one thing that changed my photography, my camera life, is the wide angle lens on phones. So this is just so amazing on the Huawei, and I think Samsung's latest, the S10 Plus and maybe S10, will have the wide angle. LG had it before,
Hmm.
and this is just stunning. The photos that come out, I keep on switching to wide angle. I was in South Beach, Miami, yesterday with my colleague, and I just loved it. So I think this is one of the makes a difference. You're able to, on the Huawei specifically, you have three cameras. You can do wide angle, normal 35 millimeter equivalent, and
Mm,
100 millimeter zoom.
nice.
So you can frame however you want. So I think this is going in the right direction.
I've gotten, speaking of wide angle, while at CES, I attended one of the press events, and there was a company called Black Eye Lens there, and they were handing out lens attachments to the members of the press. I've never really been a big fan of them because most of the time those things had pretty craptastic glass, you know, unless it was Moment. Moment makes some really nice lenses, but you usually have to buy an extra case and screw it on, and I didn't like that inconvenience. But this is a wide angle lens attachment, and the glass on it, I don't know if you could tell from just looking at this webcam, the glass on this thing is top notch. I believe this is a $70 US piece of glass, and it's absolutely beautiful, and you get a very wide perspective with very limited bowing on the edges, and it totally changed my perspective on wide angle lenses for smartphones. So now I'm sort of been out and about trying to concentrate on what kind of composition I can come up with that will take advantage of that wider field of view and still be able to tell a story with it. I started shooting in Vegas with it, and I think one of the last couple of shots on my Instagram account, Aunt Pruitt on Instagram, has this lens attached, and it's just beautiful from a
That's
phone.
that's brilliant. What was the company again?
Black Eye Lens, yeah, Black Eye Lens Attachments. I still have their card right here,
Hmm.
and I believe they were from Finland. Yep, Helsinki, Finland, and it's
Excellent.
awesome, awesome glass. They have macros, they have wide angle, and I believe they have a telephoto.
Hmm. That's
Awesome.
brilliant.
Definitely one I'll consider for the Pixel 3 XL because it is one thing that I've had since the LG G6. Obviously, it was around with the LG G5, but wide angle is something that made a big difference.
Hmm.
I I actually embrace some of the distortions some of the wide angle lenses give you. It's fun to be able to see a building warp around the edge of the picture.
Yeah, I've done that. I'll admit I've done that too.
I mean, I quite enjoy that because it makes it clear that you've taken it with that type of lens.
Yeah.
So that's good. And okay, so that's very, very interesting. Do you have any trips planned, and
Any trips planned? Um, at the moment, no. I'm assuming the next trip that I have business wise will be for Adobe's event later on this year. But right now, no, because there's South by Southwest that's coming up and stuff like that, and I just don't have the interest in it anymore. Um, but something like Adobe's event is still high up
still
on
there?
my list because it really focuses on helping people create content and help making that process a lot easier. you know but that's the only trips I have planned right now is getting out to that. And vacation wise, haven't figured that out yet. We're trying to figure something out. I'd love to go on a cruise again. I know Lukasz was going on a cruise. We went on a cruise for Christmas 2 years ago, and I would love to do that again because I was able to have a good time, relax, eat, drink as much beer and whiskey that I wanted, get out and fly the drone around an island. It was great. It was great.
Yeah, I'm taking my Mavic Air with me, so I'm super excited to fly the drone. I can't say it will be relaxing with 3,000 long-haired guys with, doing pogo to 60 very heavy metal bands. But yeah, it should be good fun anyway.
That's awesome.
Very good. So, and you mentioned whiskey there. Obviously, we're both quite passionate about consuming this beverage.
The elixir of the gods, you say?
Yes, sadly I'm past bedtime, so I'm not going to enjoy another one this evening. But yes, we're both quite passionate about that, and that is also another good thing about travel. Not only can you, if you're going through duty free, pick up some very reasonably priced bottles of whiskey, whether that's Scotch or whiskey with an E or whiskey without an E from some other regions of the world.
That's right.
It's always a very good way to shop around for it. And also it gives you an excuse to visit some out-of-the-way tourist attractions, such as distilleries.
Yes. I envy you so much when I saw that you were over there in Scotland, and oh man, that's a dream. I have had dreams of going into the Lagavulin distillery and being able to have a dram right out of the cask. I don't care how strong it is. Just it's just a dream,
Yeah, it is possible, but I would say hold on to that dream, because when it comes true, you might be slightly disappointed.
Yeah.
But yes, plenty of distilleries here, though I have seen there's been quite a growth of distilleries in the US recently, not only producing rye whiskey, different types of whiskey, but also gin seems to be on the rise.
Yeah, gin is on the rise here. There's been a lot going on over in the southwest region of the US, like Texas, and even out in like Colorado. There's been a bunch of different things just sort of sprouting up, going beyond craft beer and now going into spirits. It's been an interesting time over here.
Yeah. Lukasz and I were recently, we went to do some filming for an upcoming smartphone review in the Netherlands, and visited a craft brewery, Joppen Brewery, who now have their own spirit, which is in effect a gin made on premises in the brewery and distillery. So it's becoming quite an interesting scene.
Yeah,
not just whiskey, not just beer. It's varying, and this sort of craft, smaller batch, higher quality.
It's an entrepreneurial spirit, and I get that. At this nowadays, it seems like it's a lot easier to be an entrepreneur as long as you're willing to put in the work and make a couple sacrifices, and you can do anything.
I totally agree. So you're always welcome to visit us here in Scotland. I do have a spare bedroom, so you can stay here and sleep over that hangover after the straight from cask spirit.
Okay, so you've said it on camera now, so it's official.
I have. That's great. Just to wrap things up, if you had to leave at short notice, say tomorrow, in your case, after tomorrow, on Friday, just less than 24 hours notice, what would you put in your bag? You've been called out to a photo shoot. You have less than 24 hours to pack. What are the main items you'll put in your bag to go off on this trip?
My whatever camera that's sitting behind me, DSLR that is, my Wacom Intuos tablet, my laptop, couple SD cards, and a couple sandwiches.
Very good. Will you take any extra batteries and chargers with you?
I definitely have a couple extra batteries in there, and maybe one extra light. I like the Lume Cube light. I don't have it over here in front of me, but it's charging. But I'd like to have one extra light here and there. And the Lume Cube Air is only about this large. It's very, very small, but it packs a lot of power, and you can sit it anywhere. You can just. I've even held it while I'm shooting and framing up a shot. Just held it up under the lens to give me an extra beam of light towards the subject. And that's packable. You can stick that in your pocket, unlike trying to collapse softbox lights right here and things like that. So yeah, I definitely pack something like that as well.
That's good to hear. And in terms of cables, do you pack them neatly, separating them all, or do you have some sort of organizational process for your travel packing?
I am a little bit OCD about it. I have probably 4 or 5 USB-C cables and maybe 2 micro USB cables, and I wrap them up neatly. And there's a particular pouch that I have in my backpack where only cables go. There's a particular pouch where only batteries and SD cards go, because it makes it so much easier when I can just go to that bag and know that's where they are. Because there's nothing worse than being in the middle of a shoot and an SD card dies, and you fumbling through all of your different pockets in your backpack trying to find it, when I know they're always on the left side in the top in the red tab, period.
That's fantastic. That sounds like a discipline I do need to learn.
It makes it so much easier for you on a travel standpoint. And the best way to get into that is to practice doing it at home. If I'm just going down the road here from my house to the river to do a shoot down there just at my leisure, I'm treating it just like I'm shooting with a client. So I prepare the bag the same way. And if I need to grab something from the bag, I know exactly where it is in that bag. There's no fumbling. There's no waste of time, because especially when you're shooting outside, your light is diminishing by the second. So take advantage of it.
Yeah, that's great advice. Lukasz, any other tip or trick you'd like to ask Ant whilst he's here?
Well, no, but it's something I completely need to learn. I always mix up the cables and tangle them in all the ways possible, and always forget one cable or one charger. Last time I forgot my laptop charger, so I had a like 5 pound paperweight.
Oh
It
my
was
gosh.
super handy. So yeah, it's one thing I need to learn more about.
These little devices right here. These
All right.
are called Red Whips by Think Tank Photo, I believe is the company. You can get a bag of these, maybe 6 or 7 for like $8 US, and you can keep them on your wrist if you need to. But they're perfect for throwing a bunch of cables in and zip tying it down like that to help keep things organized. I have so many of these. They're all over the floor. They're in my bag, but this is probably the best thing that I have in my backpack right now. Is this little thing to keep me organized.
I'll definitely add this to my arsenal and add this to the video description, because this can change. This can, improve my experience with travel a lot.
Avoid spaghetti cable knots.
Oh my gosh.
Use tools.
That's right. That's right. And like I said, when you take them off of your cables, because I do this all the time, I take the cables out of the bag, plug it into whatever I need to plug it into, and then I just stick this on my wrist. And when I'm done with the shoot, I know this is on my wrist. Just take it off, tidy everything back up together, and put it back in your bag. No fumbling around, no wasted time.
That's great advice. Thanks, Ant. Excellent. Again, Ant Pruitt, thank you for joining us on the Tech Travel Geeks podcast. Obviously, at ant_Pruitt on Twitter. on Instagram, Ant Pruitt, all one word.
That's right.
Is that right? And the Ant Pruitt channel on YouTube, where not only Lukasz and I, but many others have watched videos and learnt more about content creation, whether that's the actual filming or photographing, back to the editing and publishing. Great advice, great way to learn new skill sets and improve the quality of the food pictures and people pictures you put on Instagram.
That's right. That's right. Let's take some better selfies, people.
Quick last question to Ant. In terms of taking pictures of animals, which animal do you prefer taking pictures of? A cat, a dog, or a goat?
Because I know my audience, I'm going to say a goat.
Well said, sir. Thank you very much. So that's Ant Pruitt. Lukasz, thank you for joining us during your vacation / work from Miami session. Have a great heavy metal tour, and do share some content from there. That would be great to see some Instagram shots from this heavy metal tour.
I definitely will. And thanks to you, Matteo, for staying up late. Is it 1 a.m. there?
Around about.
Yeah.
Oh, that's early. That's still
Yes.
early.
Thank you to everyone for listening or watching this podcast. You can subscribe to the audio version of the podcast, which will be edited and released in approximately 1 week. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, and wherever you get your podcasts from. If you haven't already, please do subscribe to Tech Travel Geeks on YouTube. This is the channel where we publish not only the video to our podcast, but also our unboxings, first impressions, reviews, and sample videos for all the tech we review on techtravelgeeks.com. Again, thanks to our guest and Lukasz for joining us. Good night, everyone, and we'll speak to you soon.
Cheers, bye.
Bye-bye.